Hello. Looks like I am live on YouTube. Welcome to the live stream. Looks like I am live on YouTube. Got one other person here so far. Let me put a link to the Zoom call in the chat. It's also in the description. And let me pin it at the top. Been a few days since I've done a live stream. How long has it been? Since the 17th. So 5 days ago. Been taking a little break from streaming, doing a lot of reading, mostly history. Been reading a lot about Ukraine and Russia during the Gorbachev and era and the Euromaidan era around 2014. That's been the main focus. See, we got one other person here. Feel free to say hello if you want. Let me pop out this chat window. Make it a little easier to keep track of. And where did it go? Oh, maybe I have to click it again. Oh, there we go. All right. Now let me position my Zoom window. Since, okay. Anyone want to jump on the call, say hello? Hopefully my volume is all right. This is Saturday, March 22nd, 2015, 2025. I almost said 2015, maybe because I'm back in the Euromaidan era. Euromaidan was 2014. Well, actually, it started at the end of 2013, November of 2013. I don't really have an opening monologue prepared here. Maybe I'll do that sometimes, but that's a lot of work to prepare that. But maybe what I can do at the start of shows is talk about what I've been reading since that's on my mind. So, as I said, I've been reading about Euromaidan. This is the protest in Ukraine. They had their president at the time, Yanukovych, had agreed to a or had indicated he was going to sign an agreement with the EU, the European Union, and Russia didn't like that. And at the last minute, the Ukrainian president Yanukovych decided not to sign the agreements. He pulled out of it at Russia's behest. Russia didn't want Ukraine to be as close to the West, rather, or Europe. He wanted them to have closer ties to Russia. So Yanukovych pulled out of the agreement, and a lot of people in Ukraine didn't like that, especially in Western and Central Ukraine. There was more pro-Russian sentiment in the eastern side of Ukraine, but I guess the majority of Ukraine um, didn't like that Yanukovych pulled out of this agreement, so they protested. And this was in November of 2013, and the protest eventually widened beyond just the pulling out of this agreement. It also became a more general protest against government corruption and abuses of power. There were some anti-protest laws that were passed after the protests had started, and the protesters protested the anti-protest laws. I think that was part of their motivation. And then I guess eventually the Yanukovych, he fled the country. There were over 100 deaths as a result of this protest. Protesters were shot. Some police on the other side also died who were defending the government. Um, but there were over 100 deaths, and this was the most, I guess, the largest demonstration in Europe since the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. And I think that also the um, deadliest protest or deadliest something since Ukraine gained its independence after the fall of the Soviet Union. So it was a big deal. And then I guess Yanukovych, he decided to flee the country. He fled the protesters, and then uh, elections were held for a new president to replace him. There was an interim president whose name I don't remember. And then several months later, they had a election for a non-interim president. They have terms of 5 years, I think, roughly. And Petro something. Let me see if I can find the guy's name. Ukrainian president. It was the one before Zelensky. I should be able to find his name in just a few seconds. Uh, I can. Here we go. Here's the Wikipedia article. That'll tell me. That's usually what I read is Wikipedia. I think it's a great resource. Okay. Petro Poroshenko. So he was the president elected after the Euromaidan presidents, well, after the interim president. And he was in office from, let's see, 2014 to 2019. And then after that was Zelensky. Zelensky is the sixth president of the Ukraine. And I look forward to reading about him. I kind of jump around a bit when I read history. Sometimes I jump around a lot. Like I was reading about the William the Conqueror just about a week ago. This is Middle Ages England. Well, he was the guy the leader of the Norman conquest back in 1066. And medieval England, he came over from France, from Normandy, France, invaded England. So when I say I jump around, we're talking centuries here, almost 1,000 years. But sometimes, depending on what's going on in the news, I get motivated to skip over to current events. And I guess actually doing this live stream could be part of the reason that I felt motivated to spend some more time reading about current events because it seems like that's something people might want to talk about. And it's something I'm interested in as well. It's not just because other people might be more likely to talk about current events than about England in the Middle Ages. Um, I want to know it all, though, current events and history, and I'll have a much deeper knowledge and understanding of current events if I see the background out of which they grew. That's one of the reasons I like to read a lot of history. Um, but I got motivated to spend some time on current events recently. So, in particular, learn more about the Russia and Ukraine issue because that's an ongoing issue that's in the news a lot. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine. But to really understand that, I didn't want to just jump into the daily headlines. I wanted to know about the backstory. So I've been reading about roughly since the fall of the Soviet Union um, going forward, and I'm up to the Euromaidan protest in 2013, 2014. And eventually I'll get up to the present day. I'll get up to Zelensky and the current conflict. Um, but I just want to know the backstory that led up to it. Otherwise, it feels like it's coming out of nowhere and it's hard to understand what's going on. So I like to read the backstory. Um, all right, so got a few people who've been listening. Let me see if there's anything in the chat. Haven't kept my eye on the chat window. Let me see if any comments have come in. No, nothing so far. Just my welcome to the stream and my Zoom link. That's all I see in the chat. Um, let me go back to, okay. So there is a Zoom link. If anyone wants to join the call and come on and chat, it could be, you can be video-less. You could just do audio if you want. You can be anonymous, at least in terms of your video. I guess if people are going to hear you, that's not going to be anonymous. Um, and it can be, I'm flexible on the kind of conversation it is. It could be a just get to know you kind of thing. You could ask me something about Ukraine or Russia. Not that I'm an expert, but uh, I've I've been learning a lot about it recently. Maybe you know something about it, or if that's something you want to discuss, or anything else. Kind of a debate. If there's anything you want to debate. Also, while you're here and while I'm thinking of it, if you like the stream or want to help the channel grow, you can give the channel a like. You can subscribe. That's definitely going to help. Want to get up to 1,000 subscribers so I can monetize this channel, make it financially self-sustaining. Oh, actually, maybe what I should do is put a link out on Facebook and Twitter. Maybe that'll help some people get over here and get some more conversation going, some more chat in the chat box, and maybe some people will decide to call in. All right. Actually, another thing I'll do. Actually, no, I'm not gonna. I was thinking maybe I should share my screen, but um, maybe. Well, actually, maybe if I do one other thing first. No, that's not going to work. Okay, I'm just going to go over to Facebook now and make a post. I'll just copy the text from my last post. If you're not following me on Facebook, feel free to do so. Um, okay, here's my last one. I'm currently live streaming on YouTube and taking calls. If you want to join me, here's the link. I pinned the Zoom call link in the live chat. Looks good. Copy. Okay. Now I just gotta update the link. All right. Paste. I updated my thumbnail too. Made a few changes. Post. Okay. Yeah, so on my thumbnail, I made the picture of me a little smaller, and then I was able to fit in some more text. So now it says the Dan Norton Show live, chat/debate with an Ayn Rand fan and philosophy PhD. Zoom call link in chat. It's a little different text than I used on my previous thumbnail. Um, okay, let me also put this on X. Copy. Okay, where's my, oh, here we go. Okay, I have posted on X. So let's see if that brings some more people. Got 4 people watching right now. I guess that includes me. So me and 3 other people. Oh, we got 5 people now. Nice. Okay, so well, thanks for all coming by. It's Saturday afternoon. I haven't had a regular time. Um, I don't, and maybe I will at some point, but right now I don't want to commit. I don't want to lock myself in. I like the flexibility of just kind of zooming when I feel um, motivated to do it. And there's a cost to doing that. I guess maybe more people would show up if it was planned more in advance, but um, that doesn't necessarily work well with my schedule. But for now, I think it's fine just to do it this way. But if you all have, actually, I'd be interested to know what times are good for you all. Maybe this time is good since you're here, but in general, what times are good for you all? I don't know if you're all, maybe you're working 9 to 5 jobs, or maybe you have some other kind of schedule, or even if you're at a 9 to 5 job, maybe you're at the kind of job which allows you to listen to a podcast or something while you're on the job. I don't know. Maybe if you're doing manual labor of some sort, it's easier to do that. Um, so you can let me know if you have preferences on times, but you can always catch the stream later. Um, if you missed the live. I'm also curious where people are from. Like, are these all Americans who are showing up, or do we have people from around the world? It gives me a little info on that in my analytics. I don't keep a very close eye on that though. Okay, it looks like somewhere around 8 people have stopped by since I started streaming. Uh, let's see if there's any interaction with that Facebook post I just made. Don't see anything yet. Okay, let me check on X. At least that'll tell me how many people viewed it. It says 9 people. Facebook doesn't tell you how many views your posts have, but X does tell you that. That's one thing I like about it. It says 9 people have viewed my Facebook post or my X post. All right, so, well, um, what else should I talk about? No one's jumping on the call. Maybe I should talk more about what I've been reading. Um, there's some streamers, maybe you all are familiar with Destiny. He's a very popular streamer. Stephen Kenneth Bonnell II is his actual name, but he goes by Destiny. And I've seen a lot of his content, and he spends a lot of time reading Wikipedia. At least he has in the past. And he's done lots of debates. He's a liberal, or considers himself a social democrat, something like that. And sometimes he does research on his while he's streaming, so he'll just read an article and he'll share his screen, um, and read through it, and that's what he does for some of his streams, anyways. I don't know if I want to do something like that. I don't know if I could do that. Like I think I might be too distracted. Like if part of my mind is on the chat and engaging with other people, and then part of my mind is on reading something. I'm not sure how well that would work for me. Maybe it can be done. Maybe it's something I could get used to. Um, Not sure I want to do that right now, though. Although it might be an efficient way to get things done. I could be learning stuff while I'm waiting for someone to engage with in the chat or on a call. All right, it is now 4:53. I started streaming at, I think, 4:30. So I'm not sure how long I'm going to be on today. Maybe it depends on how much engagement I get. So if there's engagement in the chat, or if someone decides to join the Zoom call, then that will keep me on longer. But if no one engages, then maybe I'll just end the stream. I'll go till at least 5 o'clock my time. I'm on Pacific, so that's another 7 minutes from now. So whether or not anyone decides to engage, I will be here for at least until the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour. I'm not sure what to call it. The bottom of the 4 o'clock hour, top of the 5 o'clock hour. Anyways, I'll be here for another 6 minutes at least. But the point of doing these streams mainly is to engage with people. So if there's no one here to engage with, then I'll just end the stream, I guess. But I'm going to give it at least a little bit of time, give people a chance. But all the previous streams I've done, someone has called in at some points, and there's been engagement on the chat. Oh, finally, we got someone. You got someone show up in the chat. Chandler says, "Sup, dude, come down to San Diego tomorrow." I'm not sure I'm gonna be there tomorrow. Maybe I'll DM you about that though. But I do appreciate the invitation, um, Chandler. So I hope it goes well, whether or not I'm there. You say the stream is a bit choppy, just the video. The audio is fine. Okay, good to know. Appreciate that feedback. Maybe if I close some windows, that'll free up some bandwidth on my end that will make it less choppy in the video. Does anyone else want to confirm or let me know if it's also choppy for you? That's good feedback. You said something in a previous live stream about changing the bit rates. I haven't looked into that, but I do remember that might be a way to um, have a smoother stream. Something I got to learn about. Um, so we got Chandler here. Um, I was for a long time, I didn't really have a public presence, and I didn't want to. So I had social media accounts like Facebook and Twitter, um, YouTube, but I never really posted anything. I wanted to be kind of low key and not public. I just wasn't ready to be. Not until after grad school, really, or very late in grad school. Um, so I understand, sometimes people they just like to watch and they don't want to have their name out there publicly. And I was at that stage myself at a certain point, but I got to a certain point in my life where I thought it made sense to be public. Um, but everyone has to make that choice for themselves when, if ever, it's a good time. Oh, thank you, Chandler. Says my haircut looks good. I actually did it myself. It's one kind of haircut which I can actually give myself. I just get the clippers and um, it's a very simple kind of haircut, and it's free too. That's another benefit. Um, so it works for me now, at least this haircut. Um, So, anyways, I see Chandler is one person who doesn't mind having his name out there. And actually, I just remembered I can, but there are different levels of being out there. Some people might want to just engage through text, but not necessarily engage through voice or um, maybe voice, audio, but not video. It's different for everyone. All right, I see we got another chat participants. Avenging lettuce. Yeah, that's another way people can be anonymous by choosing a screen name that is not their birth certificate name. So here we got Avenging lettuce, unless you happen to be born, unless that's the name your parents gave you. Um, I kind of doubt they called you, they named you Avenging lettuce, though. All right. Oh, nice. You say hello from Belgium. Okay. This is the first time that I remember someone joining the live stream from another country. And then you say it's near 1 in the morning here, so it won't be online long. Is meritocracy essentially shorthand for can generate wealth? So many great people are awful at that, like me. Haha. Meritocracy. Okay, so here's the first question of the day. Is it shorthand for can generate wealth? I think it's broader than that. So wealth is generating wealth is one kind of merit that you might have. So merit is just an ability, but it could be an ability to generate wealth, an ability to generate attention, like on YouTube, generate ability to play basketball well. So you could have a meritocracy in basketball. You could have a meritocracy in dentistry, right? Are you good at taking care of people's uh, teeth? But then, that can have economic implications, implications for your wealth. So if you can turn whatever kind of merit you possess into a monetizable asset, if you can somehow turn it into a business, then you could think of meritocracy as like a way into wealth. But I don't think it by itself, in its like most basic meaning, necessarily has anything to do with wealth. It might not. It just means people are judged on the basis of some kind of skill or merit that they have, some ability they have, rather than something that's not essential or relevant to whatever it is. So, like skin color, right, being a common example, which is, I think this has often come up in the discussion of something like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has been in the news a lot recently, and I guess struck down by one of Trump's executive orders as no longer being a criterion that's at least the federal government can use. It's hiring people. So instead of considering things like race or sex, man or female or male, when hiring, instead they have to just consider the nature of the job and whether someone is skilled enough to do it. So I think um, meritocracy is often contrasted. You can understand it by contrast to um, judging and rewarding people by non-essential characteristics like race or gender. Um, Now, sometimes those characteristics might be relevant. Like if you're casting for a movie and you've got a female character, well, I think it makes sense in that context to someone's gender is going to be relevant, or maybe someone's race is relevant. If you're going to produce a movie about Barack Obama, then you probably want to have a black guy rather than a white guy who's going to be the actor for that. Um, so it's not that it's necessarily irrelevant, but for most jobs, or at least many jobs, it's not relevant. And so meritocracy would be a meritocratic approach to many jobs, such as the ones in the federal government, would be considering people based on their skills, like maybe their performance in similar jobs in the past, whether they're good at managing people, for instance, if it's some kind of managerial position, or if good with numbers, if they're in, the accounting department somewhere, rather than something like race or gender. Um, so um, I guess that's hopefully that answers your question, avenging lettuce. Um, yes, I don't think it's exactly shorthand for that, but I think um, it might correlate with that at least. Um, um, I see a few more people have dropped in. I've seen 6 or 7 show up on the tab there. It tells me how many people are watching live, and I've seen it go up to 6 or 7. That's nice to see. All right, well, it's past the top of the hour. Why? Well, because Avenging Lettuce had a question for me. So when there's engagement, that encourages me to stick around longer. That's primarily what I'm here to do, at least for today, is to engage with people. Actually, I mean the live stream in general is I see it as an opportunity to engage with people, which is not to say, you have to use live stream for that purpose. It could be just doing a show where I'm just talking at you, sort of. I'm not engaging with you. And maybe I'll do some shows like that. But for right now, it's primarily to engage with people. So I guess the more engagement I see, the longer I'll be on. Avenging Lettuce says, thank you for that answer. You are welcome, Avenging Lettuce. Thank you for the question. Appreciate that. Does anyone else want to ask anything? Or it could just be a comment. Doesn't have to be a question. Um, I'm curious how people found out about my channel too. Like Avenging Lettuce, I've never seen your name before. Um, I don't know if you've changed your name. I guess you can change your screen name. Um, and but I haven't seen your name around, so I don't know if you're new to my channel. But I'm curious how people find out about my channel. Like sometimes my videos are recommended by other videos, maybe because there's something similar about them. And also when you found out, that's another thing I'm curious about. Um, Chandler says maybe you can have some prepared subjects to rant about while you wait for the comments. Wait for comments. Yeah, that's a good point. And I did talk. Maybe you joined the stream after I did this, but today I was talking about what I was recently reading. Um, so I was talking about Ukraine and Russia and the Euromaidan protests that happened in 2013 and 2014. And I'm not sure how long I was talking about that, maybe like 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes. And I was thinking like maybe that would be a good way to open the shows. Um, that way I don't have to like write out a script or that could be a lot of work. I guess if I'm just preparing some bullet point notes, that's less work. But today I was just kind of going off the top of my head, talking about something I've been reading about recently. So I was saying that I spend a lot of time studying history and current events, and I currently am focusing on Ukraine and Russia. So I talked about that for a little while, but maybe that was before you came on. Um, all right, we got another comment from Avenging Lettuce. He or she, I don't know if you're he or she, um, but maybe to make it simple, I'll just say he, or I could just use your name. I'll just say Avenging Lettuce says, I'm curious how I subbed to, haha. You weren't on Majority Report, were you? I love the libertarian phone-ins on that and followed a few callers who I found engaging. I was on the Majority Report many times. I was first on in 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago at the end of 2021. And then in total, I've been on their show 7 times. Um, Six of them with Sam. There was one time I called in. Sam was not there that day. It was a Thursday, and he usually takes that day off. And I was deliberately trying to call on a day he was not there because that was recommended by the producer. There was a certain topic that he wanted to discuss with me, and he suggested I talk on a day that Sam was not there, which was a Thursday. He wanted to talk about A is A, the law of identity, and he suggested I call in on a Thursday. So I did that once. But then it turned out that my call was cut short, um, rudely, you might think. Um, I don't think Emma Vigeland, the co-host there. She wasn't too nice to me that day, but she actually apologized after she hung up on my call. And then I called back again. I was thinking, well, maybe it's not so good to call on a day when Sam's not there. Maybe I'll have a better call if Sam is there. So then I called again to talk about A is A with Sam. That was my next call. All these are on my channel, by the way. I asked Sam once if it was okay with him if I posted my calls to his show on my channel, and he said yes. So I did that. So all my 7 calls to the Majority Report are on my channel. And you can find them. They're in a playlist as well, so they're all grouped together. Make it easy for you to find them. Um, uh, let's see what else we have here. So you're a subscriber to my channel. I guess that you say you're curious how you subbed. So I guess that means you subscribe to my channel. I don't know everyone who is subscribes because there's a way to turn your settings so that they're public. That is your subscriptions. Like some people, when they subscribe to my channel, I have no idea who they are. It just says I got a new subscriber, but it doesn't tell me who it is. But other people have their settings set to make their subscriptions public. So sometimes YouTube tells me um, who at least the screen name, the YouTube screen name of the person who's subscribing. Um, but I don't recognize your name, Avenging Lettuce. So I guess you have yours set to not be public. I don't know if that's the default on YouTube, but anyway, you say you love libertarian phone-ins. Actually, I'm not a libertarian. That's a very common thing for people to say. A lot of people think of me as a libertarian or call me that. Like Sam Cedar will call me that. But I've even told him on his show I'm not a libertarian, and I distinguish myself from libertarians. Um, there's basically two characteristics that I mention when I explain to people why I'm not a libertarian. One is um, objectivism is not anarchist. So many libertarians, maybe not all, but at least many, um, they're anti-state, anti-government, and they think things like the police, army should be privatized. Um, I don't I don't agree with that. I think those are two of the police and army or police and military are two of the proper functions of government. Government shouldn't be eradicated. It just should be constrained to certain functions like police and military in the court system. Those are the three basic functions, and they all have to do with protecting people from force. So you have police to protect you from domestic criminals like murderers and rapists, robbers. They'll lock those people up, put them in jail, use force to stop people who go around society forcing others. So they use retaliatory force to stop initiators of force. Um, so this is one of the key principles of objectivism. Ayn Rand's philosophy is that you should not initiate force against people. You should trade with them, engage with them voluntarily. So if you have a thief who wants to steal people's money, take stuff without their consent, that's take it by force, right? Not with their voluntary consent, then that's bad, and that should be eliminated from society. So you have police to round those people up, take them off the streets, and so they stop harassing others. Um, and then you have the army or the military to protect citizens of this country from foreign threats. So if your Belgian fellow countrymen try to invade the U.S., we have the military to protect this. Not that I think Belgians would do that. I think, um, as far as I know, uh, U.S. and Belgium are on good terms. I don't expect any invasion anytime soon. And then you have the courts to peacefully settle disputes between people. So if you have a dispute with your next door neighbor, you don't have to fight it out. You don't have to punch each other. You can settle it peacefully in a court system. So it's another way of extracting force from society. Oh, so that's the first characteristic that I use to distinguish myself from libertarians. I think there should be a government. Government is a good thing, but only when it's restricted to these very few functions of protecting people from force. It shouldn't be doing things like providing people with health care or education or social security, retirement money, which involves forcing citizens, taking money from some people through taxes and giving it to others. I'm opposed to all that. So a lot of what the government does today, it should not be doing, on my view. And then the other characteristic I use to distinguish myself from libertarians is that objectivism is an entire philosophy. It's not just about politics. So Ayn Rand has an entire view of the world. Like, for instance, she's an atheist. She doesn't believe there's any supernatural realm or being like a god. And she has certain views about the nature of knowledge, how we come to acquire knowledge. It's only through our senses, the evidence of our five senses, and then our use of our minds, our reasons, our logical capacity. But there's no room for any mysticism or faith. So religion is out on her worldview. And then there's an ethics of self-interest, rational self-interest. People should live for their own sake, for their own happiness, while respecting the rights of other people to do the same. So that whole worldview and ethical foundation underlies Ayn Rand's political views, but libertarianism kind of doesn't really have a view on those more fundamental questions of philosophy. It just kind of jumps into the political part and takes it as a axiom that you shouldn't initiate force. Um, but as to whether that's a you can really make sense of that principle outside of a fuller context, I doubt it. Um, and maybe I can talk more about that sometime. But I want to. I see some other comments have come in, so I don't want to spend too much time on this one issue. But maybe I'll come back to it if there's more time. Um, let's see what else has come in here. Um, oh, in materia. Okay, we got a new person commenting and with a question. Can you think of any examples of where it would be moral for a government to restrict and or forbid its citizens from trading with another country to restrict free trade? And then he adds, I asked this in the wake of Trump's current foreign policy tirades, which makes one seriously question the proper role of a government in regards to international trade. Okay. Just, by the way, I like having these questions. This is a good way to engage. So um, even if someone doesn't decide to call in, that's okay because I still have material to talk about just by engaging with the chat. Um, so to end Materia's questions, any examples of where it would be moral for a government to restrict and or forbid its citizens from trading with another country? So I'm thinking of war as a case where it might be. Thanks, by the way, Avenging Lettuce. You say you appreciate the distinction. Good luck with the stream, and I'll tune in more regularly. Nice. Appreciate you coming by. So maybe I'll see you in another stream. Yeah, so maybe if a country is at war with us, like World War II, we're in a war with Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan, and maybe in that context, it's appropriate for a government to restrict and or forbid its citizens from trading with that country because by trading with that country, you're providing them with resources which they can then turn around and use against you. But then I guess there's a question as to do you know that that's how they're using resources? Like, what if you know there's someone in Japan during World War II who is pro-US and is not attacking us and actually wants to help the US overthrow the Imperial Japanese government? Maybe if you can identify uh, that there's a certain particular person like that, and you have some way to assure yourself and assure other people in the US, maybe assure the government that your resources are going to be reaching that one particular individual or group of individuals who are on the side of the US, or at least not against the US, then maybe it'd be appropriate to allow that sort of trade. But I guess if you have good reason to think that um, the value you provide to Japan or the individuals in Japan that you're trading with is going to somehow end up being turned against you militarily, then you would want to restrict that. Because if the idea is to protect, if the proper role of the government is to protect its own citizens from force, and you know that resources that are going to the other country are going to be funneled into force against U.S. citizens, then you would want to stop that. But if you have some way to know, or at least think it's very probable that they're not going to be used for that purpose, then I guess maybe that should be allowed, even in the context of war. But I don't know if there's a practical way for the government to monitor or keep track of something like that. Um, maybe they would have to give people the benefit of the doubt and say, like, you're on your honor to only engage in trade with people who you know are not enemies of America. And if we find out that you are trading with people who are um, enemies of America, like and who are contributing to physical threats against Americans, then we're going to put a stop to that and maybe punish you because we don't want people helping our enemies. Um, Hello, friend Harper. I see you've dropped in. Nice to see you there. I've seen your name on the Yaron Brook show chats, or at least I've heard him. I think I've heard him call your name out. Like maybe you've contributed super chats. I've seen your name somewhere or heard it somewhere. But anyways, I don't know if I've seen you on my channel before. So welcome. Nice to have you. Um, okay, so I see there's some more. There's a follow-up point from End Materia. Let me go back to that. Um, so the second comment he made was uh, um, I asked this in the wake of Trump's current foreign policy tirades, which makes one seriously question the proper role of a government in regards to international trade. Okay, I don't know what particular foreign policy tirades you're referring to. I don't keep up super closely with the news. Actually, speaking of the Yaron Brook show, that's the way I get some of my news. I often just tune into his show, and that's how I find out about some of what's going on. Um, so I'm not sure which tirade you're referring to, but whatever it is, you say it makes one seriously question the proper role of government in regard to international trade. Well, this is bringing to my mind tariffs, which I think are bad. And Iran has talked about this a lot, how they're bad, even if they're unilateral. So even if some other country is imposing tariffs on the U.S., it's not in the U.S.'s interest, in the interest of the citizens of the U.S. for the U.S. to impose tariffs back on whatever country imposed tariffs on the U.S. Um, and I guess that's just because it's another tax on, or effectively it's a tax on U.S. citizens. So I guess if, let's say, some China imposes a tariff on the U.S., now U.S. citizens have to pay more for whatever good they were getting from China before. And if the U.S. now imposes a retaliatory tariff on China, then Chinese people are going to be less likely to buy from U.S. manufacturers or U.S. producers. So I guess U.S. producers are are going to suffer, and Chinese goods are going to become more expensive for for U.S. I think I got something mixed up. Um, Anyways, it's bad to impose tariffs in retaliation. So I don't know if that's the kind of international trade you're referring to. But let me go on. I see there's more coming in the chats. In Materia says, is it moral to trade with a communist country where it's not a value for value exchange between free individuals? Example, free man trading with enslaved man. Um, well, so the thing is, who are you trading with exactly? Can you, like, if you're doing, so trade is not between countries fundamentally, it's between individuals. Um, so if if you can identify who you're trading with, like it's different if you're just I don't know, you're just you're a car manufacturer, let's say, and in America, and you're selling cars to people in China. So I guess you ship a bunch of cars over there to some Chinese car dealer, and then the car dealer in China sells them to the end user. And you don't know, as an American, you don't know who's ultimately going to end up using your cars. So that's one kind of way you can engage with individuals in China, where you don't know the particular individuals, but you just there's a middleman between you, the producer, and then the end user. But another sort of trade would be where you do know who the end user is. Maybe you've got a relative or a friend in China, and you have a car shipped to China for that particular individual, and then he sends you money through PayPal or something. I don't know how you would do it, but um, that would be another kind of trade. And if you know who that person is, you can identify, and you know he's not anti-US, you know he's not a communist who wants to overthrow capitalism, then I'm not sure why there would be a problem with that trade. But if it is more anonymous and you don't know who the end user is going to be, and there's a certain likelihood, maybe it's like I don't know if it's an Islamic country where, Iran or something, or maybe that's not the best example because I think some of their population is actually against their theocracy. But if it's some country which is, chants death to America and virtually the entire country is anti-US and wants to destroy Western civilization, then maybe it's inappropriate to engage in trade with that sort of country, where unless you can identify specific individuals where you know your product is not going to be used by people who want to destroy you. Um, so what does it mean to trade with a country, a communist country? Because you can't really, I mean, in a sense, you can do that, but really you're trading with individuals. Um, like what would be another example? Venezuela, I don't know if are they socialists? Are they communists? Somewhere in that ballpark, but maybe there's many individual Venezuelans who hate communism and want to flee, and maybe there's some of the immigrants who try to get to the US. I mean, if you can identify that you're trading with one of those people, should that be prohibited? It seems like it might be a good thing to allow that kind of trade because they're on the side of the good. Um, but you say, is it moral to trade with a communist country where it's not value for a value exchange between free individuals? Um, Example, free man trading with enslaved man. I don't know why it wouldn't be a value for value exchange. Like, okay, so if we say I'm a free man in America and I'm trading with a slave man in a communist country like North Korea, well, isn't it a value for the person in North Korea? Like if I know it's not someone who supports the communist regime, let's say it's a pro-freedom person in North Korea, and I can somehow identify that person. Wouldn't it be a value for him and for me for us to trade with each other? And I guess insofar as I can trade with, maybe he's enslaved in a sense, but not in another sense. Like you might say he's an enslaved man insofar as he's dealing with his own regime, Kim Jong or whatever the guy's name is. But he's not an enslaved man insofar as he can deal with me. Now, I don't know if he has a way to do that, like if they have the internet turned off and they can't engage in trade with other countries. But if there is some way for me to have a trade with someone in North Korea, then it seems, at least in that respect, he's freely engaging with others. So it's not a pure case. It might be very hard to find a pure case of no freedom, like free man versus slave man. Like even you might say I'm not totally free myself, even though I live in the U.S. because I'm subject to all kinds of taxes and regulations, which restrict my freedom. Um, so I'm relatively free compared to someone in a place like North Korea, but I'm still not as free as I should be. Um, okay, let me just go on because I don't want to get too far behind in the chat. Um, Chandler says, "Sup, Harper." Friend Harper says he saw my post on Facebook. Oh, good. Yeah, I put that out maybe 5 or 10 minutes after I started streaming because I thought that might be a way to get some more people to come by, and I guess it worked. Very nice. You super chat a lot, says friend Harper. Um, yeah, that's probably where I hear your name is when you're super chatting for your on Brooks show. Um, and hopefully one day you can super chat here. I don't have 1,000 subscribers yet, or 4,000 hours of watch time within the last 12 months. But I need both of those things in order to apply to YouTube to have my channel monetized and be eligible to get super chats. So hopefully I will get there one day, and then I can also accept super chats. But in the meantime, I am answering questions for free. Um, so maybe that's a motivator to get people to come by. They can take advantage of it while it's free, which is not to say I will never answer free questions once I can take super chats, but I guess I would give super chat questions priority um, once that becomes an option. And okay. Oh, I see some more people have dropped in. Nice. We've got 9 people right now, and I've seen it get up to 10, which is nice. But this is actually a good way to get some watch time. Um, I'm actually closer. I'm at 809 subscribers right now, so I need another 191 subscribers to hit 1,000. So I'm like over 80% of the way there to my goal. And then, but in terms of watch time, I think it fluctuates, but I think right now I have like 800 some hours of watch time within the last 12 months. And that needs to get up to 4,000. So I'm below 25% of where I need to be. Below 1,000, I got to get up to 4,000. And it seems like live stream is a good way to increase my watch time. Sometimes they get more watch time than my non-live stream videos, and it's not content I have to spend time preparing in advance. So I'm thinking this might be a good way to increase the watch time. All right, let me go through some more of these comments. Friend Harper says, I'm trying to remember which one of rights I delegate to the government that allows them to place restrictions on my ability to trade with anyone, including people in other countries. Uh, so, well, one right that we delegate to the government is our right to engage in self-defense, unless it's an emergency. So if someone is attacking you right now and there's no time to call the police, then you have a right to defend yourself. But if it's not an emergency, if it's something that can be resolved peacefully, like if your house has been burglarized and you suspect that a certain person has committed the burglary, then you don't just go, try to hunt that person down and take the law into your own hands and mete out justice. That's vigilantism. You call the police and you give them your evidence that it's this particular person, and then you have them investigate. That's a peaceful way to deal with it. So you delegate to the government as your agent your right to mete out justice if you've been burglarized, if you've been assaulted in some way, um, rather than taking justice into your own hands. But let me see if I have anything more to say to that. Um, so you ask, which rights do I delegate to the government that allows them to place restrictions on my ability to trade with anyone, including people in other countries. Um, I I guess the only issue is if you can somehow show that um, the trade with someone in another country is coming back to hurt you and or other people in your country, then as your agent of self-defense, the government would have a right to restrict that kind of trade. So if you trade with someone in Imperial Japan who um, is going to fly kamikaze style into Pearl Harbor or somewhere else into the Twin Towers and kill Americans, then the government would have a right to restrict that trade because you don't want resources going to fund terrorism against Americans. Why? Well, because you delegated to the U.S. government your right of self-defense. Um, so if their job is to protect you, instead of you having to defend yourself, you delegated that job to the U.S. government to protect you. So you'd be undermining the role of the government if you are if you're trading with someone who you know is going to just turn around and use the um, the fruits of that trade to physically attack Americans. Okay, Took, we got another new person in the chat. Welcome, Took. What's your expertise in? He asks, or she. I shouldn't assume. Although maybe the avatar, I can't tell if that's exactly what's in the avatar. It's too small for me to see. I don't know if it's male or female. But anyways, Took asks what my expertise is. Well, I did get a PhD in philosophy, so you could say that philosophy is an expertise of mine. Also, I've been studying Ayn Rand's philosophy in particular for 28 years, I guess you could say. Well, at least that's when I first read Ayn Rand in 1997 is when I first read Ayn Rand, and I fell in love with her philosophy. And ever since, I've been learning more about it. And in the last several years, I've been aiming to promote it online through YouTube and Facebook and X and other social media. I posted a few short videos on TikTok and Instagram. Decided to try out some new platforms. So Ayn Rand's philosophy in particular is the philosophy that makes most sense to me, and I think it's very important and true. So I want to and will make everyone's life go better. I mean that I think makes my life go better, and to the extent that it's accepted in the culture, it will make the culture or the world in general a better place. So I want to help spread those ideas, and having this YouTube channel is part of the way I do that. And I engage with people who might not know much about it, and I want to give them exposure to new ways of thinking about things. Um, so I would imagine that there's quite a mix of among my subscribers or followers in terms of how familiar they are with Ayn Rand. Some people might have never read anything. Maybe they've just heard of her. Other people might have read all of her books, and then go to conferences sometimes even for fans of hers. There are meetings around the world. So there's a range of levels of interest, but I'm very interested in her ideas, and I've made it a centerpiece of my career, what I want to do. Now, I'm not really getting paid much right now to promote it. I'm trying to get to the point where I will be paid, but that means one way to do that is to get this channel monetized. So in the meantime, I'm doing some other kinds of work to fund my channel, or fund. It's basically funding my time, so I have time to spend promoting Ayn Rand's ideas online. But eventually, I want the channel to become self-sustaining, and if I grow it big enough, then I'll start bringing in some some revenue from the channel itself, and then I won't have to do anything else to support it, and I can spend even more time promoting it, which would be great. So if you all want to help me get there by subscribing, liking, sharing, etc., that would be great. So to answer your question, I mentioned philosophy as one expertise, but you could say Ayn Rand's philosophy in particular, objectivism, is another expertise I have. It's certainly the philosophy I know the most about. And I learned about it independently of my graduate school. So it's not something I came across in university. I learned about it independently of that. Some people encounter it in school, like they read a book in high school by Ayn Rand. She's commonly read. There's an essay contest that's maybe the biggest in the world. Are the essay contests on her books, Anthem and The Fountainhead. A lot of people come across them in high school. So millions of kids have read her books, but I came across them. My brother is actually how I found out about it. He recommended I read one of her nonfiction books. And this was right after I finished high school. That's when I started reading Ayn Rand. And I spent a lot of time studying her on my own, but I also studied in the Ayn Rand Institute. They had a program called the Objectivist Academic Center, which I was involved with for many years. And so that was another way I learned about her ideas. So I would say philosophy and Ayn Rand's philosophy in particular are my expertises. I also study history a lot. I was talking about that earlier in the stream. I've spent a lot of time studying history, and I see that as very relevant to the kinds of conversations I want to have online. Like when I have discussions and debates with people, often history comes up. Like if I'm promoting capitalism, they'll say, "Oh, well, what about this? What about this thing that happened in the 19th century? Wasn't that the Gilded Age? Wasn't that a time when you had the rich getting richer and the poor were getting poorer and people were just dying in the streets? And wasn't Social Security saving two-thirds of people from poverty or something?" You hear all these claims about how what the history of capitalism was. And to be able to address those kinds of things, I have to know something about history. So there's a book called Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, a collection of essays by Ayn Rand and some other authors, but she's the main one, that talks about the theory and history of capitalism. But I mean, there's so much to know. So that's a good place to start. If you want to defend capitalism, which I do, capitalism being part of Ayn Rand's philosophy. So in the realm of political philosophy, she promotes capitalism, and what even capitalism is a subject. It's a controversial subject unto itself. Like a lot of people will think the U.S. today is a capitalist system, and they'll point to its problems and blame them on capitalism, like the financial crisis of 2007 or 8, or healthcare problems in the healthcare industry. They'll blame it on our capitalist free market system. But our system is very far from what a truly capitalist system would be. So that's one thing that I want to help. I want to give people a new perspective on is what exactly is capitalism, and also what its true history is, as opposed to I think it often gets distorted and smeared, strawmanned. So I want to spend a lot of time learning about history so I can make a very informed and persuasive case for capitalism, and also I mean much else, but that's part of the reason I spend a lot of time studying history. It's not all a means to promoting capitalism. That's just one branch of philosophy. There's also ethics, like egoism is something I've talked a lot about on my channel. Living life for your own sake, and ethics of rational self-interest. That's a big part of the philosophy. Probably egoism and capitalism are the two things I've discussed the most on my channel. But there are many philosophies, a very broad subject. There's many other issues to talk about, like free will. That's one I've talked about in a few videos on my channel about free will. And I specialized on that topic in graduate school. In my master's program, I wrote a thesis on free will. Um, in my PhD program, I wrote a dissertation on the philosophy of mind. There's one video on my channel in particular where I actually discuss some of the core ideas of my dissertation. Friend Harper says egoism rules. Yes, I hope so. And what exactly egoism is, that's another controversial subject. And I mean, that's a big stumbling block. A lot of people, when they hear egoism or selfishness, they have in mind something like being a rude jerk and violating the rights of others, lying, cheating, stealing to get what you want. But that's very contrary to Ayn Rand's conception of egoism. Um, so she has a book called The Virtue of Selfishness, and the subtitle of it is A New Concept of Egoism. So a lot of what has to be done when you're talking about ethics is taking these conventional concepts or these common concepts like selfishness or altruism, that's another one, um, and giving them new meaning or purifying their meaning. You might think, well, it's not really giving it a new meaning. Rather, these terms have been hijacked and distorted, and we have to reclaim their true meaning. There's a debate you could have over whether is that the right way to look at it, or should some new term be invented if Ayn Rand is referring to something different than the way that terms have been conventionally understood. There's a debate to be had there, and I've engaged in some of that debate on my channel. You can see some videos about those sorts of issues. Um, but if you can kind of get beneath the semantics part of it, I think what she's actually advocating are very good. You know, regardless of what labels you use, you might argue that you should use certain labels, but setting the labels issue aside for a moment, just look at what she's actually talking about in reality. I think she's advocating for something very good. But sometimes the labels can be an obstacle to seeing that because they have so many associations in people's minds already, and you have to kind of dispel those associations, or at least say that those are not the right associations for what you have in mind. She had in mind something different. Um, okay, I'm glad to see there's more comments coming in. If it gets to a point where I can't even keep up with it, that's maybe I should consider that a good thing. Um, but let me see if I can get through some more of these comments. Where did I leave off? Oh, I was answering Tuke, who asked what my expertise was in. So I think I covered that, philosophy and Ayn Rand in particular, and then kind of had a develop. I don't know if I would call it a developing expertise or something, but I'm trying to become very knowledgeable in history. Oh, just one more thing I'll mention about history. I wrote a piece around about a series of history books called The Story of Civilization by Will Durant. This is a huge series of books. It's like 2 feet long on the bookshelf. It's 11 volumes, 10,000 pages. And I read the whole thing. This was many years ago, and I loved it. And so much so that I decided I want to write a review of the series, and it was published. This is my one piece of published writing in a journal. It's in a journal called The Objective Standard. If you go on their websites, um, you can find it for free. It used to be behind a paywall, but no longer is. So you can read that. Um, but even that was not enough for me. I still want to know more about history, so I continue to study it. Um, okay, let me read some more of these questions. Uh, Also, I see it's 5:49 Pacific time. I'm gonna go till at least 6. Maybe I'll go beyond that, but I'll go till at least 6. I also don't want to lose my voice. This is another thing that's new to me. So this is my 7th live stream, and when I don't have a guest on to talk with, I'm doing a lot more of the talking. So I guess I will more likely or sooner lose my voice since I'm just continuously talking. Um, so I got to monitor that. And hopefully water helps me keep my voice and not talking too loudly. should also help me preserve my voice. Okay. So Friend Harper says if you sell the products to the Chinese government, that's probably not good, but individuals in China is chill. Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Like if you know the government is bad, if you think they're gonna, it's not a friendly government. If it's a hostile government, then yeah, you don't want to be funding that. But it could be good to fund individuals who do share your values. Chandler says if someone in a communist country has something to offer you, that I guess that's cool for them. Yeah. Social welfare surf, says Friend Harper. Not sure what that is referring to. See, when I read these comments many minutes after they've been written, then it's harder to keep track of the what they might be referring to because the context has changed. So I'm not sure what that refers to. In Materia says to Friend Harper, agreed. I'm just asking to see some other perspectives, angles people might have on the topic. In Materia says, thanks for your insights, Dan. Much appreciated. You're welcome. I appreciate your question and engagement. Friend Harper says, made a post on X to the stream. Oh, nice. Does that mean like you reposted my X posts or what? I'm going to jump over to X to see if oh, 55 views now on my announcement on X. Um, I don't see a notification about a post from Friend Harper, but I don't know if I'm connected with you on X. I'm going to quickly type in Friend Harper. I don't know if that's the screen name you use on. Oh, I think this is you because this looks familiar. See if I can find. It says objectivist using Twitter to find character art that brings me joy. That's in your Twitter bio. Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, I see your posts on X. I'm gonna give it a like. Just gave it a like. Um, come check out newer objectivist streamer. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Friend Harper. Yeah, that kind of thing is gonna help this channel grow. Um, okay. Let me come back to the chat and actually go to a different tab. I want to keep an eye on how many people are currently watching. I got 6 right now. Um, so here's oh, Friend Harper says, "Oh, you're an objectivist. Name every object then." Okay, guess you're that's a joke. Um, yeah, I maybe that's following from the comments about like egoism. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you violate people's rights and only care about yourself and don't give a damn about anyone? A distortion of what Ayn Rand means. Likewise, if you're an objectivist, does that mean you name every object? Or another thing I've heard is like, does that mean you just object to stuff? Actually, the term comes from objectivity. That's a core concept in Ayn Rand's philosophy, which may not even be the most fundamental one. It's said in a book by one of Ayn Rand's students, the one who was her top student for decades, Dr. Leonard Peikoff. He wrote in a book called Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. He says in there that the term existentialism would have been an appropriate name for Ayn Rand's philosophy, but that term was already taken by another philosophy that had a much different meaning. So um, I guess that might have been a more fundamental term for her philosophy because it's about the primacy of existence and doing what's keeping you in touch with reality, with existence. And objectivity is a means to that. But as I mentioned, that term existentialism was already taken. So maybe objectivism was the next closest one to the foundation. Um, in any case, let me go on here. See if we got a few more comments. Friend Harper says you could have people on to chat with them about their experiences after adopting objectivism. My experience is that I'm happy now and I'm making the most money I have in my life so far. Nice. That's good to hear. Yeah, that's certainly a type of conversation which I'm open to having with people. And if you want to come on here sometime, you're welcome to do so. I don't know if you want to jump on right now. Um, I do have the Zoom link in the pinned in the chat and also in the description. But yeah, if people want to chat about their experiences before and then after objectivism, I'm definitely interested to hear about that. And yeah, it should lead to happiness. That's the point of it. Um, it should help you with that because it's a rational philosophy for living on Earth. That's a kind of informal description that Ayn Rand gave to her philosophy once. It's a philosophy for living on Earth, and that means for making you happy. All right, I see Friend Harper has joined the waiting room. Okay, I'm going to let you in just a minute. Let me just take a quick look at the other comments, and then I'm going to admit you. Tuke says, what are some of the essential issues you consider to be plaguing our culture? Oh, that's a big one, Tuke. Are you focusing on politics, he asks, and are you currently aligned with other advocates of objectivism, people or organizations? Um, okay, there's a lot there. I think maybe I will answer that after I talk to Friend Harper or maybe in another live stream. But I think there's some great questions there. So I do want to come back to that. By the way, the live chat replay, if you watch this video after the stream ends, I think it sometimes takes up to like 24 hours. Usually it's not that long, maybe like 16 hours for the live chat replay to show up. But I might just copy and paste it into a comments in the meantime, like until it shows up automatically on YouTube. Well, you can access these through the comments. And that'll be a way for me to remember this particular question or series of questions. Um, but yeah, I think I'm going to postpone that one right now just because there's a lot of good stuff there. And I don't want to give it short shrift. I want to give it the time it deserves. So right now I'm going to skip it. And let me just quickly read through these last four by Friend Harper. He says, I like something Peter Schwartz said on the Your Own Book Show about communicating objectivism's brand of egoism as non-predatorial, long-term, rational self-interest to laymen. Right. Yeah. Those are other ways you could describe egoism to get across Ayn Rand's conception. And then Friend Harper says, you can me on any time. Maybe he means you can count on me or call on me anytime. I think there's a word missing there. I have a lot to say about my efforts in formulating objectivism to laymen. Okay. Maybe you can talk some about that. And then Friend Harper says, I didn't see your X post. I wasn't following you yet. Okay. Um, I guess you found it on Facebook. Is that what you said before? Yeah, you said you saw it on Facebook. So I guess you found it there and then you found me on X. Okay, and then you say you're dialing in now. Okay. I am now going to emit Friend Harper. Okay. Admitted.
Hello.
See him. And it looks like he is unmuted. Hello?
Hello. I hear
Oh,
you.
I have to unmute myself just a second. I need to I'm getting an echo because I have the YouTube sound turned on and I need to turn that off so I don't get the echo. Okay, now I think the sound is correct. Hello, Friend Harper.
Hello. Can you hear
Hey,
me?
nice to have you
Yeah,
Yeah, I can.
thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show. Yeah. Yeah, so I've seen your name around as I mentioned, and it's nice to actually engage with some of these people who I've just seen the names of.
Yeah, and I've
So
seen
yeah,
you on
welcome.
the chat. I'm sure you've stickered or super chatted before too, but I've seen you
Yeah, a little
comment.
bit. Yeah, I don't often participate in the live chat on your on Brooks show, but I have done it a little bit, and I did one sticker, and I haven't done a super chat, although I am I probably will in the future, but I am one of his supporters on Patreon, so
Nice.
he
Mhm.
does get that value for value, at least a little bit
Yep.
from me.
I value his lived experience plus his stores of knowledge. So even if I've been watching him long enough to kind of predict what he's going to answer with, but it's still nice to hear. Sometimes he gets me stuff that I haven't heard before, and like hearing other people's formulations for the same stuff that I already have in my brain is always useful.
Hmm. And I find it valuable to get his take on the news and also
Oh,
just to
for
find out
sure.
what the news is.
I
Because as
remember
I
I
don't know
used
if
to.
you're,
Oh, after you. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I remember just like so I started getting into objectivism during COVID because of some work
Hmm.
stuff made it so I could wear headphones finally while I was working. And but I remember at the time just like scrolling through Facebook, uh only seeing certain specific headlines and slanted by way of clickbait titles from the left or the right news sources. And uh, once I was in objectivism long enough to find Yaron Brook and I'm listening to him, he's telling me all sorts of stuff that nobody around me is even talking about. And I don't hang out with people who are like politically charged or anything. So that's just selection stuff. But I'm just like, damn, I didn't know any of this stuff was going on. Holy crap. How come no one's talking about like this, that, and the other?
So you first found out about objectivism around the time of COVID?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So that story is I
And that
have
was
a
through like, was that like on YouTube? You came across one of your on's videos, or how did
nope.
you come across it?
So I used to be in the army and I had a friend who's libertarian, and I was telling him
Hmm.
basically where I stood on what we would call like the beneficiary of one's actions and what's good or bad kind of thing. My idea was like, so if you earn things, you're basically at a zero. You keep like keeping what you have as a zero. And then if you do charity, it's like a plus one. And if you steal from people, it's a minus one. But I held that it's fine to be at zero. Like that's not bad still because you're not in the negatives. And then he was like, that sounds like you would probably like objectivism. And then he sent me the What is Capitalism video that ARI has posted. That's like her live
Hmm.
speaking, her that one. So I listened to that and I was like, oh, this is neat. I like that she is explaining all of her terms, and I was super fascinated with like value and virtue defined and objective, subjective, intrinsic value differentiation. And so I was like, oh, this is neat. I'm going to type in objectivism on iTunes. And then I found Opar, and then I'm listening to Opar, and he keeps referencing Atlas Shrugged. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. So maybe I'll read that next.
Uh-huh.
And then
Okay.
yeah, and I get to listen to my headphones at like or for like 9 hours a day at work. So I just was pouring into the audiobooks that I could get my hands on.
Uh-huh. So you're no longer in the army, you're doing some other job now?
Yep. I was a medic in the
Okay.
army, and I got out of the army because I was not a happy person. And uh and then I just mostly do blue collar work. I don't plan on colleging or PhDs or anything. I just I'm applying what I learned at my new job, and my bosses are starting to take me serious, and they recognize that I don't just say things for no reason. I have standards and like thinking in terms of practicality as means applied to ends. And if my bosses tell me what their ends are, I can figure out how to be more practical and stuff like that. And they like the way I talk about these things, so they're starting to call on me for stuff, and it feels good.
Good. Good. Yeah, and there's a ton you can learn even if you don't go to college. I mean, especially I mean the internet makes it so much easier these days. There's just a world of knowledge out there, and
And shout out to
you might
Objectivism
even
for
be
being
able
all
to.
on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much on YouTube, especially like compared to when I first got into objectivism, which was 1997. Um, this was in the early days of the internet, so there was like the Ayn Rand Institute. They had a website back then. I don't know what year they started it, maybe 95 or 96. So there was some stuff you could find, but there wasn't like all the courses by Leonard Peikoff available back in those days. I had to order them out of a catalog,
Dang,
and I paid hundreds of dollars for these dozens hour long courses by Leonard Peikoff, and then they would
totally
show
worth
up
it.
in the mail.
Are you talking
Oh
like
yeah,
understanding objectivism and through induction and those ones?
yeah, all of those,
Yep.
the history of philosophy, um, uh, philosophy of objectivism. That was the course that his book was based on.
Yep.
Um, so in 1976, he gave that course in Ayn Rand's presence, or at least she attended some of the Q&A, I think. And I think she participated in some of the Q&As for that course.
Yeah.
And it was she endorsed that as the closest thing to like an official statement of the entire philosophy, something like that. He says in the
In the
intro
beginning of
to
Opar.
Opar, yeah, the exact kind of investment she gave. Um, so yeah, I heard that and all of his major courses, and all of that, or at least a lot of that, is available online for free now on I think the Ayn Rand Institute's the campus section, Ayn
Yeah,
Rand
it's
Institute
on
campus
campus,
section of their
but
website.
I know they have a lot of Peacock's. Like I've listened to, was it Understanding and Through Induction and Art of Thinking, all on YouTube. It's awesome, and the History of Philosophy one's on there too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I guess it's posted separately. It's just on YouTube, or if you want to go onto the Ayn Rand Institute's own webpage and watch it there, then you can. I don't know if the format is the same. Like they might have little quizzes you can take to check your
No, that'd be sweet.
understanding. I think I used to do some of that. So there's different ways you can engage with the content. But yeah, there's just so much out there. There's no way to keep up with all of it. Um, there's so many books that have been written as well that are coming out by, objectivist authors, and you got people
Yep,
like
I want to
Alex
get into
Epstein who.
Tara Smith's books, but they're none of them are audiobooks. I have both of
Uh,
Alex's books. I want to get the Egoism book that Don Watkins put out because I think that one, I think he said is kind of aimed towards the layman, and that helps with my mission of formulating for the layman, like I commented earlier.
hmm Yeah, I've read part of that book, Don's book, and I've read Alex's first book, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. I have his second book, Fossil Future, but I haven't read it yet. I have such a long reading list. I don't know when I'm going to be able to find the time to get to some of these, but there's a lot of good stuff out there for people who are coming to the philosophy new. Um, but I would say, like for people who are new, that Ayn Rand is probably the you definitely want to read Ayn Rand. That's a great place to start. But there's many options on where to start exactly. Like I actually started with the nonfiction because I was mostly interested in that. I didn't want to have
Yeah.
to read through some story. I had specific philosophical issues that I was wrestling with, and I wanted to get her take on. So I went straight for the nonfiction. But I love both the fiction and the nonfiction.
Yeah, when new
Um,
people ask me about a starting point, I kind of ask them more like, do you want to hear the technical theory of it first, or do you want to hear, like, do you want to see it in action and then have the theory kind of flesh out the book more? So it's kind of like, but also it's really hard to avoid spoilers for the novels if
oh
if you're
yeah.
into the nonfiction.
Yeah,
He's
I would
always talking
say
about the
if you're
dynamiting, and I'm like, what dynamiting? This book sounds awesome. Blow shit up
yeah,
or
that is
stuff up.
one
Sorry.
drawback. Yeah, that is one drawback of starting with the nonfiction. You will get some spoilers of her fiction. So if you're not like super gung ho about starting with the nonfiction, if you can start with the fiction, I would say do that. Um, I see that someone else has joined the waiting room on Zoom, and I want
Nice.
to. It's
Well, I can tag
6:10
out and
now,
let them
my
have a turn.
time.
So,
Okay, I'll probably go for maybe, I don't know, another 10 or maybe 15 minutes. But is there anything before you go that you want to say while you're up here?
I guess I want to say
Or-
to anybody else listening, um, think about starting a channel like this because the more the merrier, and you guys can start network affecting each other, being like, because like on Twitch, there's a lot of like I used to watch Twitch for Super Smash Brothers, which is a video game, and they kind of operate like you're on Brook, and it's like you can fight me for $10 and you can skip the line for 20 kind of thing, and but when they're about to turn off and they see one of the other Smash Bros people are on, they're like, "Hey, go check out that guy's channel. I'll host him right now." And then like your fans become their fans and vice versa, and you grow and you can collab and stuff like that. And maybe one day he can have Yaron on, or he can have you. And but like the more the merrier.
Mhm.
I plan on trying one eventually. I gotta get some other stuff sorted in my life, but I want to start a channel about like feeding people philosophical concepts like egoism and altruism by way of like using anime as a medium. Like, oh, this character is an egoist hero, uh, and this is his primary motivation, and behold his secondary consequences, kind of thing. And then if that ever happens, I'll
Okay.
shout out you guys. Like, yeah, watch you on for the news.
Sounds good.
Watch.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I like that idea of networking and collaborating, and that is a good way to build audiences. Um, so thanks for coming on here, friend Harper.
Yeah,
I
and thanks for
appreciate
having
the
me on.
opportunity
Thanks
to
for being accessible. I
get
love
to
it.
know you.
Have a good one.
Yeah, that's the idea. All right. Have a good day.
Yep. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye. All right, there goes friend Harper. And I see that Latent Prion has joined the call. And I guess he goes by a different name or she goes by a different name in the on Zoom. And I'm gonna let you on in just a second. I just want to catch up with the chat. Um, Frederick Sebastian Olston, a new person participating in the chat, says, I'm skeptical to the idea that you can export that model to YBS in the OIST, objectivist movements. Finn Harper says, oh God, that's my voice. Okay, I'm caught up now in the chat, so I'm going to let in this person. Admits. All right, I just hit admits, and you are on. It says, can you hear me? Hello? Oh, I think I accidentally forgot to. Oh, do I need to unmute? No, I think I already was unmuted. I think I should be able to hear you if you're unmuted. Um, because I haven't changed my. Oh, I think I just heard something. Hello?
Hello, what's up?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Give me 1 second.
Oh, I
Um,
think yeah, I forgot to. Oh, do I? Oh, yeah, I see. I hear myself in your. I guess you have to mute your YouTube or something on your end.
yeah. Well, I dealt with that. Hey, hello, Dan Norton, what's up? I've seen
Hello.
some of your content and all that. Nice to see you. What's up?
Hey, are you are you new to my channel or have you seen my stuff for a while?
I would say that I see you, I see you in and out when YouTube recommends something that you've maybe done or something. I think I saw, you went on this Sam Cedar guy maybe 3 or so times. Aside from that,
Yeah.
I think that's the stuff that YouTube recommends to me from you.
Okay, so you, yeah, I think a lot of people have seen me there. That's probably what the videos that I've been viewed the most in, because he has a huge audience. Sam Cedar, are you a fan of his, Sam Cedar?
No.
Uh, okay, you're not a you just saw my name recommended in one of his videos. Um, so he's got over 1 million. I think he has over 1.5 million subscribers now. Maybe like 1.6 or 1.7 million, something like that, subscribers. So yeah, when I go on his show, a lot of people will see my calls, and he allowed me to post his calls on my channel, as I was mentioning earlier in this stream, I think. So I think that's where a lot of people have seen me the most. Um, and I guess you're one of them.
Yeah.
So, is there anything in particular that was on your mind that you wanted to talk about here?
Yeah. Are you doing philosophy professionally? Like uh at a think tank? Are you getting paid to do philosophy right now?
I'm not doing it in a university. So I did go to graduate school and I got a PhD in philosophy. And most people who do that, they are aiming to become a professor in a university. And that is what I aim to do for a while, for my first few years at least in graduate school. But then I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. I thought I had some other ideas. Well, like what I'm doing now that I thought I might enjoy more. Um, I wanted to engage with a broader public, and so I started this YouTube channel. Actually, I think I was somewhat inspired by what Alex Epstein has done. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is someone who he's made a career for himself outside of academia, um, promoting ideas about energy, like in the energy industry, fossil fuels. And he used to work at the Ayn Rand Institute. And
Yeah. I know
Ayn
about
Rand's
him.
philosophy is
I,
okay. Yeah. So for anyone
I
who
read
doesn't
his
know about
book.
him,
I read
oh
his
yeah,
book, Fossil Future. It's a really bad book. It does a good factual summary
mm,
of say the energy industry and so on, but his policy recommendations are horrible. And I don't think he actually studied any of the underlying climate science. I think he read the IPCC reports and the popular reports for politicians, but he didn't go through any of the science as such. The best arguments he made were that the warming effects from greenhouse gases, it levels off over time. So it's not, exponential or linear. It's logarithmic, so to speak. Several other arguments, but none of those really impact the fact that, global warming is real, is urgent, and is man-made. And it is in fact urgent. I live in the Caribbean right now. I can tell you for a fact that, for example, the water in my toilet water closet, it boils, not like boil like boil, bubble bubble, but it evaporates. I grew up here for like 25 years. That's never happened before. The sun is hot as hell. For the first time in my life, I've ever had to use sunscreen. People here don't use sunscreen. That's never been the case. It's only in the past 5 or so years we began to have to use sunscreen. Uh, the sun is in, global warming is real. And forget these anecdotal things I've been saying here. The facts from, climate science. I don't mean the IPCC reports that Alex read. I mean the underlying climate physics. It's very stalwart, very well done. There are studies going way back, to the genesis of the field from people like Eunice Foote and all that. And you read their papers, they know what they're talking about. It's solid science. And his recommendations, even let's forget his approach to the underlying research, which wasn't really there. His recommendations are not very good. I think that book is going to tarnish the objectivist reputation. If the Ayn Rand Institute keeps endorsing and promoting that book and his work, I think there's going to be serious problems for them down the line. You know, but well,
okay. Well, I have not read his book myself, not that one. I read his first book, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels, and I'm certainly not an expert in that field. So I don't know if I'm the best person to debate this issue. Well, I'm certainly not the best person. But just based on what I do know about it. About his position at least. So he does not deny global warming. He says there has been global warming, but he doesn't see it as catastrophic. And I know he said like over the last century, roughly, there's been a degree and a half centigrade, I think, which I guess that's like 2 or 4 degrees Fahrenheit of increase in the average global temperature. So he does think that's the case, but he doesn't think that's catastrophic. And I know another one of his views is, or his, maybe I shouldn't say views, but he claims that the evidence, the data shows that there are far more uh, cold-related deaths than heat-related deaths. So deaths due to cold, like I guess lack of energy to keep people warm, far exceed the deaths due to too much heat. So even if there is global warming, you might think, well, maybe that's a good thing. If it turns out that there's far more deaths due to cold than to heat, maybe it's good to have more heat. And of course, if you're in a part of the world, you said you're in the Caribbean, but if you're in the part of the world or the tropics where there's too much heat, then something like fossil fuels can help get you via like jet fuel or plane fuel, can help you move to a place that's not so hot if heat is a problem. So those are a few of the thoughts that come to my mind, just based on what you've said. Um, but I do have I see it's 6:22, so I'm not sure how maybe I'll go till like 6:30-ish. But we can go back and forth a bit more if you want to follow up to my comments or add anything to what you said previously. Do you have anything else you want to um, oh, I see just I see some more comments coming in on the chat, including one from President Sunday, who is another YouTuber I've had a little communication with. He says he wants to help set me up on OBS sometime. This is hurting me. Oh, I guess my setup is hurting you because it's too primitive or something. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I did use OBS one time, actually, when I made a video relating to your channel. I think that was the one I used when I was making a response video to one of your videos. Um, but I haven't used it since then. It was more complicated than the other software, but I know a lot of people, the other software that I use, but I know a lot of people do use that who stream, and I guess it has more flexibility and allows you to do more than one thing, more things. And I do see OBS in my future because it does seem like it's kind of the industry standard, and it'll allow me to do more things. But I am very busy with many projects, so when exactly will I get to the time to learn it? There is kind of a learning curve for it, so I'm not sure when I want to make the transition to other software, but at some point I probably will. Um, but I'll come back to you in just a second, Lee. I just want to catch up on these chats. FriendHarper says, um, oh, you know what? I don't think I'm going to catch up on the chats. I don't want to lose the momentum too much on this conversation. So, Lee, do you want to follow up to what I just said or add anything to what you said before?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is, keep in mind, I understand fully that I'm not like debating you because I'm not intending for this to become adversarial at all. I'm just like,
Sure.
unfortunately, I don't mean to be in any way rude to anyone, but Alex Epstein's book is really problematic and really there. Okay, I'm going to make a statement, and I want you to go and talk to any experts, even a mild experts on the topic, and tell them Alex Epstein wrote a whole book where he made strong claims about the way to approach, climate policy, and he did not mention tipping points once. Walk up to any person and tell them he wrote a book where he did not mention tipping points once. That is sufficient grounds to dismiss the entire book. Put that aside. He also made statements which are fairly trivially They're the kind of statements that a creationist would make about evolution, and the creationist wouldn't understand how ridiculous he looks when he makes them. But only a person who understands evolution will see how crazy the person looks, you know, when put in context with the facts. So, for example, in his book, he said in two different locations that when we talk about the global average temperature, he then used an example of, I think it was London, I don't remember which city. He talked about, an increase of 2 degrees centigrade would mean that the temperature range in London would go from, let's say from 19 degrees to say 21 degrees or something. You say something like that, the global climate is an energy system. It's about energy in, energy out. And it's the way that energy moves from between different systems on the planet. And so when we talk about an average temperature rise, we don't mean that there will be a uniform rise in temperature across the globe. Rather, in different locations, the climate system will be affected differently by the carbon dioxide concentrations. And in fact, in some locations, it may even get colder, right? But in other locations, it'll get significantly hotter, and so on and so forth. And he talks about it as a uniform rise in temperature, which is one of the red flags that it's like when a creationist says something like, well, if humans evolved from apes, why are there still apes? That's the tier of argument that is, and that's how it sounds. That's how it comes across to someone who's going into the research. Harper here, another mistake that, the kind of argument that sounds like, the creationist, how a creationist sounds to a person who understands evolution. When Harper here says, do they not have air conditioning in the Caribbean? I'm sitting in an air-conditioned room right now. There's air conditioning in the Caribbean. The problem is not merely that, you can't just say, use air conditioning. It's not sufficient because the entire environment around you is heating up, and you're going to have to keep burning more and more and more fuel over time. Okay, put that aside. There are other sort of really weird things that Alex did. For example, of course, if you have global warming and it's having a negative effect in the Caribbean, or just the equator in general, that means that all these locations are going to have increased incidences of cancer. In fact, I left my country, my Caribbean country, and went to live in, the West for a little while, for about 8 or so years. And when I came back in the last 8 or so years, right? So it's about 8 or 9 years now. I came back 8 years later, and there are people with moles on their faces all over the place. All of a sudden, this was not the case before I left. All of a sudden, people have moles on their faces. Moles are pre-cancerous lesions. Cancer from global warming is a real thing. It's going to really ramp up over time. Alex Epstein in his book said that he would address cancer. Let me tell you very clearly, listen to me carefully. He said that he would address it sometime in the first 3 chapters, and he said that he would address it in, let's say, the 10th or 11th chapter. I'm telling you very clearly. He said that, and he did not address it for the rest of the book. He just left it dangling. And that's a very major thing he's supposed to have addressed. If he claims that we can just keep burning more fossil fuels, he needs to address that cancer issue. He did not address it. There are many problems with that book, which apparently just, unfortunately, they appear to just sort of go over the heads of the current objectivist zeitgeist. That book is going to be a huge discredit to the objectivist zeitgeist over time, right? The book is really bad. It's as a factual summary of the mechanisms available in the energy industry, it's pretty decent, but on points of inference and points of interpretation and points of policy recommendation, it's really problematic, and it makes arguments that are sufficiently alarmingly bad that I try to explain the extent to which it sounds absurd to someone who's gone through a bit of climate science. There's a final thing I want to say, but I'll probably let you respond. Maybe I'll ask you to respond here before I say the final thing.
Okay. Yeah. I just made a few notes. So one thing I'm curious about is like your background. A lot of times people who try to discredit Alex, they'll say, "Well, are you a scientist? Like, do you have a degree in science?" And he'll say, like, I'm a philosopher, and he's become self-educated to a large extent. And I think a lot of what makes his view different than other people's is his philosophical framework. So I think he brings to bear Ayn Rand's philosophy, her egoism, and maybe some other ideas, a pro-human, pro-flourishing framework to issues of climate and energy. And he also has this idea of climate mastery. So, which I think a lot of people they don't discuss at all. They don't take into account the ability of humans have to master the climate, and they'll talk about the negatives of fossil fuels, but not the positives. And they have a kind of a biased view against them. Um, so he has some kind of framework, a philosophical framework about how humans engage with their environment
Would you mind if I
that's
would you mind if I
that's
interject?
distinct.
Would you
What's that?
would you mind if I interject briefly? I understand the human flourishing framework and I understand the objectivist ethics. I understand that it's supposed to come from a pro-human perspective. I promise you, I do not give, any cares at all about animals or the environment. I promise you, I'm coming at this from a pro-human perspective. I am a person who does not care about animals at all.
Okay, so so would you say well, I guess I have two questions. One is, what is your framework like philosophically? Like, are you sort of like on Ayn Rand's wavelength?
Yes,
That's one thing, or do you have a very different sort of philosophical view of the world? And then secondly,
yes, the
like
answer is
in terms
yes.
of the science, like what is your scientific background? Like, are you a scientist, or are you just someone who's done a lot of self-study, or like what is how would you describe your state of knowledge when it comes to this field?
So I am on the objectivist camp, in the objectivist camp, and with respect to my knowledge of the
Okay.
science and so on, I work in engineering. I'm a computer scientist. That's not really a hard science, but I have done self-study on the issue. I studied
Okay.
some I studied some basic, I studied physics. I also studied climate physics, which is a real field. People talk as if climatology is just like, airy fairy nonsense. No, it's real science that's grounded in real physics.
Okay. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure where I want to go at this point. So I think this might be, it could be a longer conversation, maybe a much longer conversation, but I do think I want to wrap up the stream in a few minutes. Maybe if you're interested, you could come on a future stream and we could, when we have some more time, we could discuss this further. Um, but you said you had one more thing you wanted to add, so maybe we'll make that the last main point uh, for your call right now, and then I'm going to close out this stream. So, do you want to make that other point that you alluded to?
Yeah, sure. We don't need to say silly things. Sorry, we don't need to say very, scientifically, un out of sync with science things to tackle global warming. There's a very simple thing we can do. One of the problems we have with nuclear is people don't trust nuclear energy. A very simple thing you can do is you can use something called a vendable warrant. Just an idea you can use. It's something it works like this. You when you who is the person who is best positioned to know when a nuclear facility is not keeping up to date with its regulatory burden or its with its safety procedures or whatever? It's the employees, right? The employees always know. How do you leverage that employee knowledge and keep the government out of it? It's very simple. You give the employees a legal mechanism. You allow them to file for a warrant on oath or affirmation. We already have warrants. You allow them to file for a warrant, and then you allow them to sell the warrant off to a non-government organization or anyone else. So that ties a monetary incentive to sort of get to providing oath or affirmation to allow a third party to inspect your employer's workplace for safety at the nuclear plant. And then if the third party inspector executes the warrant and finds evidence of a lapse in safety protocols or whatever, then they can sue and they get a share of the profits. And then they can then pay from that share the employee who reported them. And how do you anonymize it? So, well, why would the employee, the question is, why would the employee report the employer if, they'll just get fired? Well, you can anonymize it. Courts already, every court in every country already has sealed documents. You, you use the sealed document mechanism to seal away the name of the person who filed for the warrant. So it's anonymized and there's a monetary incentive tied to it. It's decentralized. There's no regulatory commission. You can abolish the entire Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And that's how we can get safe nuclear. And we don't need to have the government involved. And we also don't need to say silly things like we need to burn more fossil fuels, right? We don't need to say silly things like that.
All right. So that is your closing statements. All right. Well, thanks, Lee, for coming on. And since I want to end the stream soon, I'm going to wrap this call up now. But maybe we can continue in a future live stream.
Sure, no problem.
All right. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Okay, not sure. There's a way. I don't know if I can. There's some way for me to end the call, or you can just exit yourself. I'm not sure how I remove you, but right now you're. Oh, okay. I guess he removed himself now. I got to figure that out. Okay, so yes, for nuclear, that's a technology which I think has been um, demonized and improperly criminalized. There's so many regulations that make it hard to use, whereas it's actually a very safe form of energy. This is I'm giving what I know from what I've learned from Alex and some other sources, but I know that he thinks that nuclear has a lot of promise and it should be much easier to use than it is. Right now, it's because of regulations. I think it's become too expensive, and that's why it's not used as much. Um, by the way, he has a website called energytalkingpoints.com. I think that's the title, and there's tons you can learn there and see. So if you want to get his position on these things, that's one resource. So um, Lee there, that was the name, right? Lee, I think something like that. So he was throwing some shade there at Alex, and uh, I'm not sure it was justified. But as I said, I'm not really an expert on this myself, so I don't know if I'm really in a position to debate this. But maybe I'll give it some more thoughts between now and the next time he comes on, if he does come on again, and we can engage more on that. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe we can have like a three-person call. So if one of you out there knows more about this issue than I do, maybe you would want to come on here. And I think I could have three people on at once and maybe more than that. And we could um, try to have more of a discussion. So let me just take a quick look at the chat before I wrap up this stream. See if there's anything else I want to respond to quickly. See, this is something I got to figure out. Like, how do I apportion my time and my attention between the chat and just engaging with guests who come on? There's an art to doing that well. And this is all new, so I certainly haven't mastered it yet. And also, like, if I'm going back and forth too much, I lose momentum with one, and it can, I guess, have a choppy kind of feel. So I have to find the right balance because I do want to be able to engage with people in chat to some extent, and also want to be engaged with the caller and not be like too distracted in one or the other direction. I want to get the right balance, and over time, I will. Get better at that. Oh, I see we're up to 11 people. I think that's the highest I've seen it. Um, Now, I don't think I'm going to be here all day if I try to keep up with the read through all these chats and try to respond to them. So since I'm trying to wrap up the stream, I'm not going to read through them all now, but I will read through them after the stream. And maybe some of them could be, some of these comments could be a basis for future discussion. hopefully they are at least civil comments. I do like to keep discussions civil, and I guess if they become uncivil, then I can always delete them or block. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. Um, but I've enjoyed being able to engage with you all. So thanks for coming by on this Saturday. And I'm glad we had took a little while to get the chat going. It took a while for someone to show up, but we got it on a roll eventually. And I was glad to see all the engagements. And then we had 2 callers. So uh, that was great. All right. I am going to wrap this up and have a nice day, nice weekend, everyone. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.